Hi everyone, welcome back to Cindy's Art. This is part 4, the final details for this ocean rock watercolor paper. Thank you all for waiting for me. I've had bronchitis, I still have it, and I'm not going to cough today when I'm recording and talking with you. So I'm going to start off with some wet on dry. I have wet, meaning a little bit of water mixed in with my paint. It's almost like butter at this point. And I'm using the color neutral to add in just some shadows and some details around the rock. And what I'm doing is defining some of the shapes that I want to remember before I add in my yellows and my browns and my oranges and my greens. So when I start to work on some of the green tones in here and the details, I am looking at the my reference photo, but I'm painting this in the process I want and the colors that I want. I don't need it to look like that. I don't need it to be perfect, but it does help guide me along with where I want to place things. So I'm finishing up with some of my greens right now, and then I'm going to start to move into using some browns to add in some of that detail as well. And I am a rotator. I will rotate and I'll work on my dark spots just so I can see where those lines are. Then I'll start moving into my greens, then I'll start moving into my browns, and you'll see me go back, maybe add a few greens in. I paint intuitively. What do I feel like it needs, and I'll add that in. You'll find your rhythm and your way as you work along with watercolors. So glean from people, but watch to see what you really enjoy. Now I needed to shape these rocks further, and the way that I shaped them was adding wet on wet. I wet down my paper just a little bit, then I added some greens in, and I let it blend in to that water. Remember that paint will go where the water is. And so when I put water down and I put a dab of paint in there, it's going to spread. And I went very slow and meticulously because I wanted this to have a certain look. I didn't want it necessarily super loose. I wanted to enjoy the process of painting details on this painting. Now dry brushing, I'm using the side of my brush, and it might be hard to see, but I actually am using the side of my brush, and I'm simply using a little bit of paint, and I have a scrap piece of paper on the side. So I'll dip my brush in a tiny bit of paint, I'll scrape it on the paper because I want to remove any globs, and then I come back into my painting and I start scraping the side of this brush along the paper. And what am I doing? I'm adding texture. It adds a really awesome texture to the rocks and adds a detail in that I wouldn't get. I'm not going to paint that with the tip of my brush and do all that work. I prefer the dry brushing. It makes it really quick. It's very interesting too to use. So remember that technique. Now I'm going to use the same dry brushing type of technique, and I'm going to add in some yellow, some orange, and some brown tones. And the yellow tone was using Aurelion, and the orangish tone is a yellow orange. It's a permanent yellow orange, and that's a Holbein paint. And then I use a little bit of raw sienna in here, which is a lighter type of brown, and I really like those colors. You could use yellow ochre as well, but I used a raw sienna just to develop the colors. Again, you're going to see that my rock doesn't necessarily match the photo. It doesn't have to. I'm painting with colors that I really love, and one of my favorites is the permanent yellow orange that I add in to my paintings. I really love that color, so I will look intuitively to see where do I want to add that in. And so I'm just going to continue, and I'm using a lot of dry brushing in here at this point because I just want the textures. And I'm not looking exactly, but I am looking at, like, what does this rough rock look like? It has these lines that go horizontal, it has lines that go vertical. And so how am I going to add that in there? I don't need to look at every line. I just have to look at the overall, like, what is this texture? And it's rough looking. I want to describe it. It's feathered looking. It might be soft looking. And according to what I'm describing, then basically I'm just finding different types of brushing or ways I can use the paintbrush to add that in. Okay, the rock really is becoming alive, and I've got to add in some more shading into it, some darker tone to it. So I'm putting a very small layer of neutral paint, very small amount of paint on it in order to darken it up. And the dark is going to reveal the light. So if I'm going to have some nice, beautiful light reflections in a painting, I have to make sure I have enough dark. And even over on this left side of the rock, adding a little bit of black in there, it makes it look more three-dimensional. So again, I might look at my reference photo for this, and I might look and see where are some of those shadows, and what does that look like? This is a very light wet. I'm adding it onto the dry, and I'm just adding it in until I feel like that those shadows are developed enough. And I love it because when I play with my paint like this, I feel like I'm seeing more of the 3D effect come out of it. I just love watercolors. They're just amazing. from this point forward, it just gets easier and easier. I just need a few final details. And one of the things I have as a rule is like this rock, I've painted the overall color, then I added about 2/3 detail, and now I'm down to the point where I only need a little bit, so 1/3. I only need to paint in another 1/3 of detail. I try to portion it out when I'm painting, and I don't need to paint detail everywhere. I need to suggest to the person what the shape looks like, and I don't need a ton of lines to do that, otherwise we're painting a photo. So I'm looking at my reference, and I'm looking for the bare minimum. Squint your eyes when you're looking at a reference photo too, and see where some of the general shapes are. Where are the darkest shapes? Where is the light? And when you do that, it'll help you clump colors together. It'll help you clump shapes together. And so on this painting, all you're going to see for the rest of the lesson is me finishing up with some final details of these rock. You have to tell me how yours turned out, and I provide information down in the description for you to do that. You can post it up on Instagram, follow me on Facebook, but I would love to see your work. And one thing I really appreciate too is when you ask questions and put things in there. It's like, Cindy, this is not a beginner painting picture, which I didn't list this one as, but if I did, oh my gosh, no. I'd say this is probably about a level 3 painting, picture, because of the detail, the things we worked with the reflection, and then the rock detail. But it's so much fun. It's so much fun to play with. It doesn't matter what level you're on. Just keep painting. I got back into painting after 20 years, guys, and I was really good at oil and acrylics and some other stuff, but the fumes of the paint I couldn't handle. So I decided to pick up the one painting style that I never thought I would do, which was watercolor. And as I got into it, I just stuck with it. And the more that I did it and the longer I did it, I learned techniques. I picked up things from other people, and it has become my favorite medium. So I would love to see your work, and I so appreciate you guys sticking in there with me and seeing this final phase 4 video. I'll have more coming out for Christmas. I am continuing to get over bronchitis. It's just been a fun season of cold germs. Wow. And I hope that you and yours are doing well. And I will see you on the flip side with some Christmas videos coming up next. Thanks, guys.